The atomic age put fear on the big screen in ways audiences had never seen. Cities leveled by Martians and glowing machines. A man shrinking into nothing after a walk through radioactive mist. Ants the size of cars crawling out of the desert. These films weren't safe distractions. Well, they were fun. But they were also visions of annihilation, survival, and the uneasy future, waiting just outside the theater doors. Drive-in audiences in 1958 didn't come for subtlety, and Attack of the 50-Foot Woman delivered exactly what the title promised. Allison Hayes stars as Nancy Archer, a wealthy heiress mocked by her cheating husband and dismissed by everyone around her, until a glowing UFO encounter makes her grow to skyscraper size. Soon she's stomping across highways, tearing roofs off houses, and squeezing cars in her fist while looking for revenge.
I know where my husband is. He's with that woman.
The effects are crude, rear projection, giant props. But that poster image of Hayes towering over traffic became one of the most famous in movie history. What often gets forgotten is how quickly the film was made. Shot in under 2 weeks on a shoestring budget, it still became one of the defining cult classics of 1950s sci-fi. Radiation doesn't just kill in 50s sci-fi, it makes you grow and grow and grow. In The Amazing Colossal Man, a soldier survives a plutonium blast only to swell to 60 feet tall, wandering Las Vegas in a makeshift diaper tunic. The effects are primitive, but the sight of a giant man looming over casinos was unforgettable for drive-in crowds. Directed by Bird-Eye Gordon, nicknamed Mr. B.I.G. for his love of oversized creatures, the film became a cult favorite. What's often overlooked is how it ends, with the colossal man falling to his death at the Hoover Dam, a spectacular finale that gave audiences a tragic punctuation mark to all the atomic fun. In It, the Terror from Beyond Space, the story is simple but effective. A rescue ship leaves Mars, only to discover a stowaway alien picking off the crew one by one. This low-budget gem is often called the prototype for 1979's Alien. Claustrophobic sets, dark corridors, and a monster in the vents kept audiences on edge, even if the monster was just a guy in a rubber suit. Directed by Edward L. Kahn, the film wastes no time. It's tight, lean, and suspenseful. The overlooked detail? Future TV star Ray Perry Mason Collins was originally set to appear, but budget cuts trimmed the cast. Even stripped down, the film's influence outlasted its production values, and for a little B-movie, it cast a long shadow, proving you don't need money to make an idea stick. If any 50s sci-fi film looked like it came straight from a pulp magazine cover, it was This Island Earth. Scientists are recruited by the mysterious Exeter, a polite alien with a towering forehead, and swept into an interplanetary war. The highlight was the mutant, bug-eyed, claw-handed, and instantly iconic. Audiences gasped, laughed, and remembered it forever. Universal gave this one more budget than the usual B-picture, with rich technicolor and dazzling effects. What often goes unsaid, the film was one of the few 50s sci-fi titles to become a mainstream hit in Europe, proving these atomic age fantasies weren't just for American drive-ins. Set in the eerie deserts of Arizona, It Came from Outer Space brought paranoia to the neighborhood level. A meteor crash leads to strange behavior in the townsfolk, and soon nobody can be trusted. The Hook? It was one of Universal's first big 3D productions, sending rocks and aliens flying straight at audiences. What makes it memorable is the mood: lonely highways, starry skies, and the creeping fear that your neighbor isn't really your neighbor. The story came from none other than Ray Bradbury, and you can feel his fingerprints in the desert atmosphere and suspicion. It might not be the flashiest of the 50s hits, but its mix of paranoia, atmosphere, and that 3D gimmick made it a drive-in favorite that stuck with audiences long after the glasses came off. Few movies captured 1950s paranoia quite like Invaders from Mars. Told through the eyes of a young boy, it begins with a glowing saucer landing behind his house. Soon, his parents, the neighbors, even the local police start acting strangely cold and robotic. The low-budget sets, with their surreal sandpits and endless tunnels, gave the film a dreamlike quality that made it feel like a nightmare brought to life. This was also one of the first major sci-fi films shot entirely in color, giving those eerie green skies and glowing eyes an extra punch. It's rough around the edges, but the child's eye perspective made it uniquely unsettling, turning a simple alien invasion into a story where even home wasn't safe. A glowing meteor cracks open, unleashing a red, oozing creature that grows bigger with every victim it devours in 1958's The Blob. What made it stick wasn't just the goo, it was the cast. A then unknown Steve McQueen, billed as Steven and already too old to be playing a teenager, anchors the story as the only one who believes the town is in danger. The effects were simple, colored silicone crawling over miniature sets, but they were clever enough to make audiences squirm. What really made The Blob unforgettable was the way it kept growing, swallowing whole diners, movie theaters, and eventually threatening to engulf the entire town. The pacing built from small scares to all-out panic, exactly the kind of slow burn that made drive-in crowds scream and laugh in equal measure. Proof that sometimes the best monsters are the simplest ones, just an unstoppable force that won't stop coming. Long before John Carpenter made it terrifying again, The Thing from Another World set the template for the trapped with a monster formula. A team of scientists and Air Force personnel in the Arctic dig up a frozen visitor, drag it inside, and, naturally, it thaws out. What follows is pure claustrophobic suspense, with shadowy corridors, crackling dialogue, and James Arness towering under heavy makeup as the alien menace. The effects are simple, but the atmosphere is sharp enough to draw blood. The film ends with one of the most famous warnings in sci-fi.
Watch the skies, everywhere.
For 50s audiences, it was a chilling reminder that the unknown might already be on its way. Few 50s sci-fi films hit as hard or stuck in your head as firmly as The Fly. A brilliant scientist tests his teleportation machine only for a housefly to slip inside and come back with tragic consequences. What starts as subtle, odd behavior quickly turns nightmarish. The film wasn't just creepy, it was a surprise box office hero, raking in around $3 million on a budget under $500,000, sending Vincent Price's career soaring. More than just a monster movie, it showed you could terrify and tug at the heartstrings in one slim package. H.G. Wells' classic novel got one of its most memorable adaptations with The Time Machine. Rod Taylor plays the inventor who pushes into the future, witnessing world wars before arriving thousands of centuries ahead, where the gentle Eloi live under the shadow of the monstrous Morlocks. The stop-motion effects of the time machine racing through history still impress, and Taylor's performance gave the story heart. And while it technically premiered in 1960, it's usually grouped with 50s sci-fi, the final flourish of the atomic age before the genre shifted into a new decade. For many fans, it feels less like the start of the 60s than the perfect send-off to the 50s era of imagination. Few 50s sci-fi films felt as big as Forbidden Planet. Audiences were transported to Altair 4, a distant world of ancient ruins, hidden technology, and one very troubled scientist. Leslie Nielsen, years before his comedy days, plays the straight-laced commander, while Anne Francis becomes the prototypical space princess. But the real stars were Robbie the Robot, instantly iconic, and the invisible monster from the id that terrorized the crew. The Technicolor visuals, sprawling matte paintings, and eerie electronic score made it unlike anything else from the era. And while it looked like pulp adventure, its story was straight out of Shakespeare's The Tempest, layered with psychological dread. It wasn't just another creature feature. It was proof that sci-fi could be dazzling, thoughtful, and just a little unsettling all at once. When H.G. Wells' classic finally hit the screen, it became the ultimate vision of alien invasion. Meteorites crashed down, cylinders open, and soon Martian war machines glide across the countryside, firing heat rays that turn tanks and buildings to ash. Their cobra-like necks and that unforgettable electronic sound effect gave kids nightmares for weeks. Director Byron Haskin didn't waste time with mystery. The destruction starts almost immediately, and it never lets up. Even an atomic bomb can't stop the Martians, leaving humanity helpless until nature itself intervenes. For 1950s audiences, still living in the shadow of World War II and the dawn of the nuclear age, the idea that even our biggest weapons weren't enough made this one unforgettable. The big bug craze started here, with them. Atomic testing in the desert spawns ants the size of trucks, and suddenly Los Angeles has an infestation problem nobody can fumigate. The reveal of the first giant ant, its feelers twitching in the desert haze, made 1954 audiences jump out of their seats. What followed was part monster movie, part police procedural, with soldiers, scientists, and flamethrowers chasing the colony into the sewers. The effects might have been rubber and wires, but the tension was real. For a generation living with headlines about nuclear fallout, the idea that nature itself could mutate and fight back was more terrifying than any rubber suit. Not every alien invasion needed ray guns. In Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the horror came from something quieter, the people around you losing whatever made them human. Pod people replace neighbors, friends, even family, with cold, emotionless copies. The small-town setting made it even creepier. It could happen anywhere. Director Don Siegel shot it like a noir, with tilted shadows and constant unease, until paranoia seeps into every frame. The ending, with Kevin McCarthy screaming into traffic,
"They're here already! You're next!"
gave audiences a chill that never wore off. Whether you saw it as a metaphor for communism, conformity, or just the fear of losing yourself, it became one of the most enduring nightmares of 50s sci-fi. If the rest of 50s sci-fi was pulp, The Day the Earth Stood Still gave the genre its soul. A sleek flying saucer lands in Washington, D.C., and out steps Klaatu, an alien envoy with a simple warning: change your violent ways or be destroyed. Beside him is Gort, the towering robot who could vaporize tanks with a single beam. Unlike most invasion films, the threat wasn't about destruction. It was about judgment. Michael Rennie's calm, dignified Klaatu made the message land with quiet power, while Bernard Herrmann's eerie score added otherworldly weight. For audience just entering the Cold War, it was both a warning and a plea. Decades later, it still feels timely, a reminder that sometimes the scariest reckoning comes not from monsters, but from ourselves. Did we miss any atomic age nightmares? Let us know in the comments. And if you're craving more movie recommendations and peeks behind the velvet curtain, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.